321 Central traffic stop.
21.
I'll be on East Green, right outside Henry County, 911 dispatch.
321 status.
Hello viewers, welcome back to another episode of Bridges. We wanted to start by giving out our sincerest condolences to the members of the community and the people that were affected by the horrendous attack in New Zealand a couple of weeks ago. Anytime an incident like this happens, it doesn't matter where you are in the world, you still feel it because a loss of life is important. A loss of life is a loss for everybody involved. Because of that incident, we've had the community reach out and ask us to do an actual show on active shooters. We've also noticed that there has been an uptake in the use of the word active shooter in the past couple of years, which has now created a sort of a fear in the community, thinking that every time a shooting happens, it's an active shooter. And we don't want that to happen. We wanted to address this with the community and bring an awareness to the community as to what an active shooter is. And throughout the program, we'll go through with the psychology of active shooter the best that we can, as well as what you as a community member can do, as well as what our response as a police department is. I have the pleasure of having Commander Bashir with me again today. Commander, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
I'm doing good, Commander. So we've seen an attack in New Zealand. Before that, we've seen an attack at a church in Dallas, and then before that, another one earlier last year at a synagogue in Pittsburgh.
Yes.
It's a tragic loss of life, regardless of why the attack happens or where it happens. It's always tragic.
Right, absolutely. Not just that, airports, malls, movie theaters. So we have seen these attacks. But the question is, okay, why they're occurring?
Yeah.
What can we do about it?
Yeah.
Is there something we can do to prevent it? So I'm glad the community members actually step forward and ask us to educate all the viewers about what is defined active shooter.
Yeah.
Then somebody just discharging a firearm.
Yeah.
What did the statistics show us about the active shooter plus his pre-attack behavior, and how we as a police departments all over the nation have evolved in addressing this type of threat.
Yeah, and that's one of the biggest things, because as police officers, we come across shootings every day. We respond to shootings on a very daily basis, and we don't throw out the word active shooter to everything that we respond to. Right. It's just that now it's being labeled every time a firearm is used that it was an active shooter.
Right.
But we know as law enforcement that active shooter has a specific definition.
Yes.
That the FBI has, that we use to define an incident. Unfortunately, it's being thrown out there a whole lot more than
it is. But the unique thing is that whenever somebody discharges a firearm or the shooting is occurring, from our experience, our practice is we're going to treat it as an active shooter.
Absolutely.
And we're going to make sure that we have our equipment on, and we're going to address the threat.
Yeah.
However, the definition may vary. Yeah. What we perceive as active shooter and what the
community sees it.
And what else, and also how the federal government defines active shooter.
Yeah, so let's go over that. Let's go over the definition of the first thing when it comes to an active shooter. So the federal government itself and even police departments define an active shooter as when a person goes into a certain confined area and tries to kill people, cause harm, and create panic without any method or pattern. Mostly this is done to inflict mass chaos, mass casualty. It's not going to be one person just shooting one person. We don't consider it to be an active shooter.
Like for example, a robbery gone bad. Well, we don't consider it as active shooter incidents because the person was there to commit a robbery, not to cause mass casualties.
Yeah, and that's where we go in as when active shooters are mostly they won't have a pattern. As we'll discuss down through the program in the next few minutes as to what active shooters do, but there's mostly no pattern to it. If you look at the recent shootings themselves, there's no pattern to how the killings took place. It just happened.
It just happened, yes.
Yeah.
So let's first set some objectives and some of the goals. Why it's important for us to have this episode and how the community can benefit from it.
Absolutely, because we want the biggest thing is we want to educate the community. We as law enforcement officers go through training, especially in the U.S. We go through a lot of training when it comes to active shooters. But the community doesn't go through the same training. They just see what is produced on the TV or what they read. That's their extent of knowledge of active shooter. And unless you really go out there and start digging up stuff, go to the FBI's website, which is a great resource for information. You don't know.
And actually, I'm glad you brought that up, because much of the information that we are using is coming, the statistics, the data we're using for this is that it has been screened and make sure it's properly, it's validated, and it's coming from the FBI
So the
website.
so
And our
to-
personal experience
Yeah,
as well.
so to build on that, the FBI has been collecting data since the 1970s on active shooter scenes. Now, most people don't even believe that it goes that far back, but the FBI has been gathering data since the 1970s from the first initiation of when they wanted to create specialized divisions like SWAT to go out there and handle these incidences. It all happened because the FBI started collecting data and seeing that something like this existed, where
Yes.
people just wanted to just go out there and kill everybody they saw. And that was the definition, and then the FBI started building on the definition to what we have today that they
Right.
show. But I'm sure the biggest thing right now, the number one question that everybody asks is, how common are these incidents?
Right.
From the news, it sounds like there's one happening every day, but
Right.
but we know that that's not the case.
Right.
Yeah, there's a difference to it. If you look at the FBI's data for the last 2 years, we've had 30 in 2017 and about 20 last year.
Right.
But if you go back and look at the news, it sounds like there's one happening every day. And what it does, it kind of puts everything in negative perspective. People get afraid.
Well, but here's the thing: is that because of how well the media, the information is able to be shared throughout the world, it appears like it's happening in a backyard.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Like the New Zealand one, it started
Right.
and was instantly, pretty much the entire world knew. Like my phone started blowing up when people were asking, hey, this is happening right now. And that's how the world works today, because we're so connected that an incident is not isolated anymore. It happens everywhere.
Now we live in Houston.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the viewers who are watching this episode live in different cities.
Yeah.
And just to give you a few of the cities that we had very mass casualty and active shooter, just recently we had one in Las Vegas.
Yeah,
At
that was a very big
the,
one.
At the concert, 58 people passed away, 489 wounded.
Yeah.
Fort Lauderdale, 5 killed. Orlando, 49 killed, 53 wounded. Dallas, where the person was shooting at officers.
Yeah,
The
he
intent
killed
was to kill the officers.
Yeah, he killed 5 officers out there.
And we also had a couple of them in Houston.
Yeah, we had one on Memorial Day 2016 that unfortunately I was one of the responding officers out there at that time. It was chaos even for us, because in Houston you really don't see something like that. At least in my experience, I've been a police officer for a while. I hadn't seen anything like it until I saw it that day. Then we've had another one down by Law Street where that took place, and then most recently we've had one in Santa Fe.
Yes.
So
'Cause I remember the one, we had one at the Metro bus stop.
Yes.
That actually evolved. It required multiple agencies.
yeah, exactly. That was down by South Rice, and,
Yes.
and a lot of agencies from different places had to end
No,
up
it happened
responding.
Southwise. Actually happened downtown.
Yeah.
And the person ended up committing suicide.
And then we can go back as to give you another idea of some of the drastic ones. We've had one in Paris. We've had multiple in Paris, actually. If you see, the biggest one was the Bataclan theater that happened, that ended up requiring specialized units to use all their force to go in there and contain the situation. We've had one in Orlando, Florida. We've had one in San Bernardino. The list goes on and on. And in a way, when you start looking at the list, you do kind of feel like, oh my God, this is happening quite a lot, but that's not the case. But let's start by first going through some of the common things that we can see as an active
So
shooter.
what happens is, whenever this active shooter incident occurs with the mass casualty, what is it that goes through the people's mind? Who is the active shooter?
The person.
Who is the suspect?
Yeah.
Why did he do this? And we want answers.
Exactly.
So FBI did extensive research and about the pre-attack behaviors of the active shooters, and they came up with 104 variables. We cannot discuss all these variables.
Time
We're just going to touch
constraint, yeah.
about
The common ones
the
that
common
are most
ones. So that way you can be aware of it and observe that behavior, that somebody may be planning an attack or maybe is
thinking about it
Thinking
or
about
is
it.
going down that road. And,
Right.
and the thing is, we want to get them help before anything happens.
Right.
We also want to stop that attack. Our job, as we've mentioned previously in the past programs, is that we want to preserve life.
So what the FBI has done is they looked at the active shooters, they looked at their age, race, employment, relationship, they look at the demographic, they came up with different variables. What we're trying to do is predict if we can prevent this.
Exactly, and that's a challenge because as we just mentioned, there's no method, there's no pattern to it.
There's one thing. I understand that we may see that there's no hope in preventing this. Actually, there is, because but the research has shown us that more than 80% of the time somebody knew about this attack.
And that's very interesting. That 80% of the time in an attack, somebody, a close family member, a friend, a fellow student, a fellow churchgoer, or a fellow mosquegoer, somebody that was within the vicinity of that person knew that this attack was going to happen. But as we'll discuss, they decided not to talk about it.
But we're going to get to that. Why didn't talk about it? What were they afraid of? Or why didn't they feel to report? So let's talk about the pre-attack behaviors of the active shooter.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the stressors. So the stressor, this is how I'm going to define stressor, are physical, psychological, social forces that place real or perceived demands, pressure on an individual, and which may cause psychological and or physical distress.
Yeah, so for the layman, from a normal person standpoint, of course, this is a little bit of a medical jargon, something that law enforcement officers understand, but stressors are certain indicators in your life that can send your thought pattern in a direction that you never thought you'd go. Nobody wakes up a day and says, hey, I'm going to shoot up a school, or I'm going to shoot up a church, a mosque, or I'm going to go out there and I'm going to kill people. There are certain things that build up to it. It's not an instant switch. Nothing in the human psychology is an instant switch.
So let me give you some examples. It could be financial strain, conflict with friends, abuse of illicit drugs, conflict at school, conflict at work. It could be many different stressors that the person was not able to handle properly.
Yeah.
Now, let's focus on another one. It's grievance. Mm-hmm. This is the person who believed that
they've been wronged.
They were wronged in a nutshell. Yeah. And this could be got fired, in the person's mind got fired for no reason, or didn't get the promotion. Yeah.
And that's a very common thing, because back in the day, we had a term that would say, hey, that person's going to go postal, or did go postal. And the reason for that term was that a very long time ago, there were no standards of firing or terminating an employee from a job. So when the Postal Service was terminating employees, they were seeing a lot of where a person was coming back and shooting up the postal location, disgruntled, unhappy, and that coined the term, we're about to go postal. So that was an interesting term when I was researching for it a little bit.
But we don't see that.
We don't see that
used anymore. We hear the word active
shooter, because active shooter is now the new term. Instead of postal, they now use active shooter, and it's used quite a lot more than postal was used. So it's out there.
And I think those instances were active shooters, but we just didn't define it as such, because those individuals just went back to their work and just kill anybody that they came across their path.
And that's basically what it is. An active shooter most of the times will pick something that they're going through, as the commander mentioned, it's grievance of some sort. You could be at school, could be being bullied at school, nobody's paying attention to it, nobody's trying to figure that situation out, fix it, and the kid thinks that he doesn't have anybody to turn to. Or at a location where you just terminate from, like you mentioned, hey, I didn't get my promotion, I was passed off for somebody, I deserved it. And sometimes those things, along with the stress from your daily life, from other things that you're facing, can just snap a person's mind.
So now let's focus on concerning pre-attack behaviors and communication. How did those active shooters, prior to the attack, communicate their intent of what they were going to do?
Yeah, and one of the biggest things one of the biggest things that we've seen in recent years is the use of social media. People will usually post it on their Twitter, their Facebook, or some sort of account, making that intention known. Another thing is they'll discuss it with a friend. They'll just casually mention it and just say, hey, I'm thinking about something like this. And it sounds crazy, but people actually do that. People actually go out there and they say, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. So that's something that is a very primary way of telling somebody.
Let me expand on that. So what happens is, when somebody does give this information to the significant other or friend or teacher, or see it on social media, if the person does not report it or take any kind of action, then what happens is then we cannot prevent it.
Yeah,
we cannot take any intervention steps.
Action always beats reaction. Right. That's the thing. So we can only react to it at that point if we're not understanding, if we don't know. We can't prevent it.
Now, remember earlier you asked that question about, that people do know about it, but here's why some people do not report it, because of their relationship with the person. They could be best friends. They didn't feel like they were disloyal or disowning the person.
They don't want to break their trust.
At the same time, would the person believe him if they report the incident? Yeah. And the last I would say is that nobody wants to believe that somebody they know could end up being a mass murderer.
Exactly. That you don't. Most of the people don't even look at somebody and say, "Hey, that person right there, he's gonna end up doing some horrendous attack like this tomorrow," because people just don't perceive anybody they know in that light.
Right.
And that is one of the things that we challenge. But let's hold on that thought, viewers. We are going to take a break, and we will be right back and continue on this topic. Don't go anywhere.
321 Central traffic stop.
21.
I'll be on East Green right outside Henry County. 911 dispatch.
321 status.
321 Central traffic stop.
21.
I'll be on East Green right outside Henry County. 911 dispatch.
321 status.
Welcome back, viewers. So before going on break, we were talking about how more than 80% of the time, somebody near the person knows that an attack like this is going to happen. So let's go about talking about what they should do when that happens and how that can help us and help them.
The first thing I just want to say is that we shouldn't have this mindset, hey, there's nothing we can do about active shooters.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to happen when it's going to happen, and nothing we can do to prevent it. But actually, I don't think that's an accurate statement. Yeah. Many times, as you said, 80%, we keep saying this number over again. Yeah. The statistics have shown that somebody who knows the active shooter has the information that he's up to no good.
Yeah.
He's going to do something very harmful to other people.
Yeah.
The reason why people do not choose to act upon that information is because their relationship with the person, or they may not believe that somebody will believe that person when they do report it, or they just want to be loyal to that person.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that it's very important for you to report the information, especially when it deals with violence.
Yeah.
Okay, you
Absolutely.
may have some thoughts, but if you have some violence that you're going to carry out, now it's not here anymore.
It's
now,
actually turning into an action.
Action, yes.
Yeah.
Then we need to do something about that.
Yeah.
So what I would tell the viewers is, please call the police or let the authorities know so we can intervene.
Yeah.
For example, in Tyler, Texas, there were 3 students who were planning an attack at the school. Somebody heard it, and they reported to the authorities, the principal or a teacher, and they reported to the authorities, and the police were able to intervene and prevent that from happening.
Okay.
Imagine what would happen if that plan did flourish. There would have been a lot more people.
Exactly. We could have had
dead.
another shooting like Columbine when we had that back in the 90s.
And we also had different incidents where the parents went through the children's diary and they found something that was very disturbing.
Absolutely. There was one where the child's diary, not the child, the kid's diary actually had schematics of actual bombs and everything, and it would have been a horrendous attack, but the father saw it and immediately contacted the authorities because he was worried about not just the kid, but other people that the kid was going to come across, and it's very important. So we need to go through, hey, you need to let us know, because the only way we're not going to be able to help anybody, not the person that needs the help.
And this requires make sure that our children are better educated. Let them know if they hear anything about violence. They need to have that trust with their teachers, with their parents, that they can pass the information on to them. Same thing at your work. If you feel that somebody's watching or doing something or has some violent tendencies, then your employer, somebody needs to know about it.
As we said before in the program, our first concern is preservation of life.
Right.
Okay? And prevention is the best way to preserve life. Prevention is just the utmost way to preserve life. Now, viewers, we're going to go into a different section where we can talk about what you can do when, God forbid, if you come into a situation like this. The first thing what you do is, we have a video from you that HPD made. It's called Run, Hide, and Fight. Let's go ahead and watch the video, and then we'll discuss it a little bit after that.
It may feel like just another day at the office, but occasionally, life feels more like an action movie than reality. The authorities are working hard to protect you and to protect our public spaces. But sometimes bad people do bad things. Their motivations are different. The warning signs may vary, but the devastating effects are the same. And unfortunately, you need to be prepared for the worst. If you were ever to find yourself in the middle of an active shooter event, your survival may depend on whether or not you have a plan. The plan doesn't have to be complicated. There are 3 things you could do that make a difference. Run, hide, fight. First and foremost, if you can get out, do. Always try and escape or evacuate, even when others insist on staying. Encourage others to leave with you, but don't let them slow you down with indecision. Remember what's important, you, not your stuff. Leave your belongings behind and try to find a way to get out safely. Trying to get yourself out of harm's way needs to be your #1 priority. Once you are out of the line of fire, try to prevent others from walking into the danger zone and call 911. If you can't get out safely, you need to find a place to hide. Act quickly and quietly. Try to secure your hiding place the best you can. Turn out lights, and if possible, remember to lock doors. Silence your ringer and vibration mode on your cell phone. And if you can't find a safe room or closet, try to conceal yourself behind large objects that may protect you. Do your best to remain quiet and calm. As a last resort, if your life is at risk, whether you are alone or working together as a group, fight. Act with aggression. Improvise weapons. Disarm him. And commit to taking the shooter down, no matter what. Try to be aware of your environment. Always have an exit plan. Know that in an incident like this, victims are generally chosen randomly. The event is unpredictable and may evolve quickly. The first responders on the scene are not there to evacuate or tend to the injured. They are well trained and are there to stop the shooter. Your actions can make a difference for your safety and survival. Be aware and be prepared. And if you find yourself facing an active shooter, there are 3 key things you need to remember to survive. Run, hide, fight.
Hey viewers, welcome back. So for the video, run, hide, fight. So let's discuss a little bit. Before we go into the video, let's talk about why a person chooses a target.
Right.
That's an important thing. So because like you mentioned, people don't normally go to a mosque or a school thinking, hey, this is going to happen to me.
Right.
It's
Actually, these are the places we let our guards down.
Yeah.
As a place of worship or a movie theater, because we went there to be
entertained, to enjoy, to educate, to learn,
Right.
and all these other things. These are called, there's a specific name that we in the law enforcement community use for a target. It's called a soft target. A soft target is usually a location that doesn't have any sort of protection or resistance that may stop a person from attacking that location. May not have security guards, secure entrances, list goes on and on. But it's basically a soft target because it's easy for a person to move through. It will have a lot of people which will meet their objective of causing mass casualty, mass chaos, and that's why we refer to it as a soft
Now,
target.
before we talk about what you should do if you're involved in an active shooter incident, run, hide, or fight. But let's talk about the business owners, the establishments. That we highly suggest that you have some kind of emergency plan.
Yeah, it's very important.
If you do, for example, receive a bomb threat or an active shooter instance, how are you prepared to do it? Now, the statistics show that 60% of the time, the active shooter incident is over by the time the police arrive.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it takes just, what, matter of a few minutes?
Yeah.
So recently, I'm very thankful that I'm given the opportunity to attend one of the synagogues where they actually did an exercise.
Okay.
How they would handle internally if an active shooter came to the building. How would they convey the message to the police? What kind of information do we need once we get to the scene so that way we can either eliminate the threat or isolate it?
Yeah.
And from that point on, how can we save lives?
Yeah.
So this is something that I'm very happy they did that because what we found out was our shortcomings. Where do we need to make improvements on? And the other thing is, I really want to change the mindset of the viewers is, you cannot just call 911 and just wait for the police and not do anything
Absolutely.
to
Absolutely.
mitigate the situation.
And
so this is where we come in about the video.
Yeah, and this is all training. Just like we train how to respond to these locations, if you as a business owner are training your employees and the people that are coming there to know what to do if a situation arises, it helps us because we know from our experience that as soon as you get in a stressful situation, the first thing you do is what your mind is trained to do. So it's very important to be able to know the little things like where the exits are, how you're going to move, and all these little things. But let's go ahead and talk about
the locations
themselves. And as we were mentioning, so locations like schools, churches, synagogues, places of worship, they usually don't have any security guards. They usually don't have anybody that will resist when a person attacks. And that's why they become appealing to people, especially schools. Schools have resource officers, but since they're so big, if you're in one part of the campus, by the time you get to the second part of the campus, a shooting may have already happened and ended.
Right.
So that's very important to know, hey, what kind of, if you are in the logistical location that, I mean, we're going to get a little technical, but it's very important to know that, hey, where your fire exits are, how you can move, and that's where the run, hide, fight comes in. So we'll discuss the first part, which is run.
Run, yes.
So what do you do when, the first thing is now.
Before you even say about running, I just want you to be aware, the first thing you need to do is you need to have the survival mindset. I'm going to get through this.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not going to let the situation end my life here. I'm going to fight it till the end.
Absolutely.
And the first option is we recommend is run if you can.
Yeah, if you can exit the location, if you know where the exit is, take yourself, guide as many people as you can out of there, because an important part of that would be as you're getting out, you may be able to give responding officers information about what's happening inside. That can help us a lot of times because when you pick up the phone, you call 911, a lot of times we see, and this is actually very common practice, is when law enforcement is responding to a location, we'll hear, oh, it's 3, 4, 5 shooters.
Right.
And a lot of times it only happens being one because information is just coming in from different locations. But if you're able to get out from that location, if you're able to get out, there's nothing wrong with you wanting to survive, but it also helps us because you can flag the first officer down and say, hey, this is what's going on inside.
Yes, I agree.
And that can help us.
Right.
So you're not just saving your life, but you might be able to save somebody else's life through us.
And that does not make you a coward if you run.
Absolutely, because there's only so much you can do in certain situations. Because unless you're training every day, unless you're training like we do on a very regular basis, you're not going to be able to do a whole lot. And there's no point in putting yourself in that jeopardy if you can. Right. So the second thing would be to hide.
Hide.
Now, again, these may sound weird, but
Yeah.
these actually work. Because if you cannot run, if your location is not secure for you to get out, then you need to barricade yourself. You need to hide in a location. You need to turn off the lights if you can, make it as dark as possible, because if a person can't see you, they can't attack you.
Yes.
And lock yourself in a room where you can control who comes in and goes out. Now that's a technical term, but basically what you're doing is you're just having one entry and one exit.
Yes.
And a person can't come in, they can't harm you. So barricade yourself and as many as you can with you. And
turn lights off, cell
Yeah.
phone, and
Yeah,
also
absolutely.
Make sure that you have some item that you can use
Yeah.
as a weapon if that comes to
Exactly.
the next section, which is fight.
Yeah.
But I do want to, one more thing we want to talk about is cover and concealment.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay?
So when
because you hide.
Yeah, just because you hide doesn't mean anything. So so when it comes to cover and concealment, it comes in every section of this: run, hide, fight. The difference between cover and concealment is very simple. Cover is basically you hiding behind an object or some sort of thing like a wall, which will prevent a bullet from getting to you, which will prevent a person from seeing you and being able to successfully attack you. Whereas concealment is you just hiding from that person. So you dive behind the sofa's not going to stop anything,
Right.
but you're concealed from that person, and that's the primary difference between cover and concealment. That's how police work as well. When we are moving up to a location, we see what can cover us, what can conceal us, and you have to make that judgment, which one do I want to use? So it's important in run, because you can't just run straight out of you will have to use some sort of cover and concealment.
And the other thing is remain flexible. Yes, you may run, then you may have to hide real quickly, you may have to run again.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you need to make sure you're at the same time very flexible.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not going to be one or the other. Is not. You don't want to commit to one act and just go, okay, I'm just going to make a run for it no matter what happens, or I'm just going to hide no matter what happens. You have to be able to look at the biggest thing. One of the things that we really should mention is you have to stay calm. Now that's easier said than done, but if you stay calm, you can save your life. You can save the life of the person that's
Make sure
with you.
it's very difficult, but maintain your emotions and have the survival mindset.
Absolutely.
The last thing, let's expand on the fight.
Yeah, so as we're talking about the fight, well, let's save that thought.
Okay.
Viewers, we're going to go on a break real quick, and then we'll come back and we'll expand a little bit more on the run, hide, fight theory. Don't go back.
321 Central, traffic stop.
21.
I'll be on East Green, right outside Henry County, 911 dispatch.
321 status.
321 Central, traffic stop.
21.
I'll be on East Green, right outside Henry County, 911 dispatch.
321 status.
Welcome back, viewers. So before going on a break, we were talking about run, hide, and fight. You can run from it. You can run from an active shooter. You can hide from an active shooter. Let's talk about fight. There's going to be a time where the option is not going to be able to. You're not going to be able to run.
Yes.
You're not going to be able to hide. You're going to have to fight. You're going to have to. You're going to have to have the mindset. And like you mentioned, it is very important to have the survival mindset when you're in the fight.
As you have seen the active shooter, many of the time, the active shooter actually ends up committing suicide.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there are times that the civilians, they were able to subdue the active shooter and then save so many people's lives.
Yeah, because, I mean, you might be very close to the active shooter, closer than you would like to be, and at that point, you really don't have an option to run or hide. You might just have to fight them, have an object of some sort next to you that you can use.
Object you can throw, object you can stab him with, object you can distract him or her with.
Yeah.
So make sure you guys, don't give up.
Yeah, exactly. There's the biggest thing, as we keep mentioning, is the mindset that you must survive it. And if you can survive it, you can overcome anything in the world, and fight is just part of it. So let's go into a little bit about how we, as Houston PD, I know that we've got viewers from all around the world watching this, but how we as HPD respond to the scenes, how has policy changed on the command level?
Well, since this active shooter incident started occurring, actually the law enforcement profession, we have made dramatic changes in how we respond to these incidents.
Okay.
In the beginning, what we used to do was that our officers, they were not properly trained. Our first responders, the patrol officers, and what they used to do was wait for SWAT. While people are dying, we used to wait for SWAT, who were specialized, who were trained in these type of incidents, to come. And it may take a while for them to get to the scene.
Yeah.
So that didn't work, and we modified where actually we started training our officers, our first responders, to now they're gonna have to go inside and engage.
Yeah.
What we did was we quickly formed up a team of officers who were trained how to respond to active shooter incidents. and they would go inside and once again engage the threat or eliminate the threat.
Yeah, and we've got officers that are willing to do that at any
Yeah.
given level. They, even if they have to go in there alone,
Absolutely.
they are absolutely
But now
willing to do
it's changed even further. Now, if you're the first responding officer, then you are encouraged to go in to save lives.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
as you can see, we have continuously evolved in our response and how we handle active shooter incidents. Furthermore, we are doing much more training as we did in the past. We have more better equipment. We have ballistic vest. I have one on right now. Actually, you put one more over it if
Yeah.
you were dispatched an active shooter incident.
Yeah.
Not just active shooter. Anywhere you feel like the shooting's happening right now, you can put on an extra.
We also have a lot
extra
more
protection.
flexibility with the weapons we use now. We
Right.
now are allowed long guns,
Yes.
short barrel rifles, equipment that we can use,
Yes.
that we can get to, and start deploying that type of equipment.
Right.
And I know the
The other
chiefs.
thing is we started training more often with our weapon to improve our accuracy,
Yeah.
and that way we can also be able to discharge our weapon under stress.
Yeah.
So you under normal conditions you can
Yeah.
shoot, but under stressful situation where your heart is beating out of control and be
Yeah.
able to maintain
Absolutely.
your muscle memory and then be able to focus, that takes training.
Yeah, and then I know that the chief has been very vocal about active shooters as well,
Right.
and he's got the department going in the proper direction because he
Right.
wants us to be able to respond, and then our training. That's just, I mean, we touch on it, but our training has.
I'm glad you talked about the chief of police. So recently, I had the opportunity to attend the Major City Chiefs Association in Washington D.C., where you had where the chiefs from the major cities such as New York, Philadelphia, Chicago, Houston, Phoenix, Atlanta, Miami, they all attended. Where what they do is they discuss the issues that are impacting law enforcement. So Chief Acevedo, he's the president of the organization. So whenever an incident like this occurs, since he's the president, what do you think he does? Pass that information to all of the other chiefs, the major city chiefs, and the information gets passed very quickly of something that happened in Houston that can easily happen in another city.
Yeah.
Because we don't want copycats.
Exactly.
Same thing like New Zealand, when the terrorist attack occurred in New Zealand, we already put our protocol in motion. We started make sure we monitor our synagogues, our temples, our mosques, our worship, our religious-
places of worship,
well,
all
places of
churches and everything,
worships.
yeah. Mhm.
So and then we start, letting people know that we are here
Yeah.
to provide extra security. What I'm saying is, even though this happened 1,000 miles away, but still we were
we have
ready.
a reaction
Yeah,
to
we
it.
had a
Yeah.
reaction to it.
And one of the biggest things now that we've had that is also how, when it comes to training, one of the things we just discussed was, hey, officers are being trained, and that's where our part comes in. As part of a former tag team, there are certain trainings that we go through.
Right.
And even with patrol, and it's not, we're not relying on SWAT anymore. We have a different way of responding.
There's one more training I want to talk to you about.
Sure.
Was that where we are now are doing exercises, different scenarios where we work with the community members, and we look at their plans, they look at our response plan, and then we mitigate. Okay, what is working, what's not working, what can we do differently?
Yeah.
For example, as I mentioned earlier, for example, if you have a plan but you never used it,
You're not going to know what to do.
you're not going to know what to do.
Exactly.
For example, if you do have an active shooter, okay, you call 911, but what about the people in the building? How can they be aware this is happening right now?
Exactly.
Or where's the active shooter going right within like 30 seconds? Where is he right now? So that
Yeah.
information needs to be passed internally.
Yeah.
And then also, the one thing, and also how can you convey the information to the dispatcher?
Yeah.
Okay, so these are some of the things we came up with, and then we learned quickly. Okay, we have some work to do.
Yeah.
Now, what I would encourage is, if you own a business, you want to create some kind of plan, I would reach out to your local law enforcement agency and work with them to see what you guys need to do
Yeah.
to make it work.
So you brought up 911. Let's
Yes.
talk a little bit about what happens when a person calls 911. So the first thing that you're doing when you're calling 911 in Houston, you are talking to a call taker.
Yes.
A call taker is a person that's gathering all the information that's coming through. They are passing that information down to the responding units, which is our patrol units, our tactical teams that are at work. It's going down the chain pretty fast, but we need to know what kind of information is being
Yes.
brought out. Like, what's the location, when the incident exactly started happening, and how many people do you think are inside the building, as well as if you may possibly know the the identity of the shooter themselves, because that helps us.
This is a true story. This happened with me. One time I was dispatched to one location, and I ended up going to that location, but come to find out that it was a different street. For example, I was dispatched to 8500 Airport, okay? But once I got there, I'm like, where's the incident at? And they actually said, no, it's an 8500 West Airport. Now in the
Completely
complete
opposite.
opposite side of the city.
Yeah.
So something like minor like that,
Yeah.
with a west or east or north,
Can change especially in a city like Houston, which is huge,
Right.
where you have all these streets with multiple names, multiple directions. It can happen.
It could
can
be North
absolutely
Main,
happen.
South Main, East Main. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like
Yeah, it's very important because for
drive.
us, as soon as that information is coming down, we're responding to it. And as we mentioned earlier, when information is coming in, sometimes it's coming in where everybody's just calling at the same time. So three people could be calling from the same location, and all of a sudden, instead of having one shooter, we could have three.
Right.
The shooter may be wearing white, we might have red. And it's very important to know those kind of information
Yes.
because the responding officer needs to know who they're looking for,
Right.
what they're looking for, and how to be better prepared because
Right.
we're driving there and deciding at the same time what we want to do.
We want to do that exactly.
it's
What
just
kind
like
of
you-
resources do we need?
Exactly.
And if anybody's hurt, anybody's injured,
Yeah.
the last
Yeah, because the responding officer
last
has to make that
location of the
decision if they have the time to save somebody that may be injured, or if they need to push on through
Yeah.
and get to the shooter themselves. It's very important to look at that kind of information.
So whenever there's an active shooter incident, it's going to be very chaotic.
yeah,
People are going to be yelling, screaming, running, and out of all of that, the police officer when he comes to the scene,
Yeah.
let's walk through. Once the police
Yeah.
officer comes,
Yeah.
he's going to have to
Yeah.
immediately take some kind of action to control the scene.
Yeah, so the first thing you need to know is, obviously, as the captain mentioned, it's chaotic, which means the police officers are going to be just as amped up because they're going into a situation which is probably the most stressful one that we have right now. So the first thing we want the people to know is that just listen to what the officer is saying.
Yes.
Keep your hands as visible as possible.
Exactly.
If we can see your hands, we know you're not a threat, and we can guide you through. Okay, that's one of the biggest things. Let us know if you've seen any injured. Okay, if you know the layout, because we won't have time. At least the first responders will not have time to look at the layout, to look at the exits or anything like that. So if you have critical information like where you saw the shooter last, or where an injured person was, or where the next exit is, that will help us because that helps us stage our resources, and that helps us decide where we need to go next.
Because our officers are trained to go toward the threat.
Yeah.
We either isolate him or eliminate whatever we need to do to stop the killing.
Yeah.
Now, when we have that kind of mindset, if somebody's hurt or injured, we may not be able to provide medical
Immediate
aid
medical attention. Yeah.
while there's still killing going on. That's something we just want the people to be aware of. That
Yeah.
is that we need to save life immediately.
Exactly. And then another thing is, not me being an officer, once we're amped up, we do like to yell.
Yes.
Especially the situations. Please don't take that personally.
Yes.
If an officer is yelling at you, listen to what they're saying. Just listen to it, and
And
that'll
the
help.
other thing is they may even grab you and push you
Towards
a
the
certain
wall,
direction
onto
or
the
wall.
ground. Yeah.
They're not there to hurt you, but they just have to make sure that they control the scene.
Absolutely. And another thing you can help us with is if you are able to provide first aid to somebody, do so. It helps. A lot of people these days know about first aid because people like to be prepared. Preparedness is important. And if you can provide help to somebody that's injured, you can help us. You can save somebody's life by that. If you can stop a bleeding or just apply a cloth to a wound, you can help us with that thing. Again, follow the instructions that the officers are giving you and give us information.
So what is something you can expect? You can expect that you may be evacuated. The whole scene may be one big crime scene. It may take hours or even days to fully process that scene. And you will be a witness, so that means you're not free to go. You will be temporarily detained until we gather all the information.
Yeah, because we want to make sure that we are able to get everybody's information. You can let your loved ones know you are okay. We're not stopping you from anything, but we have to keep you contained because once this thing takes place, it's a gigantic crime scene.
Yes, because you're going to have the media at the location. You're going to have public officials, the mayor. You're going to have the police chief, the fire chief. You're going to have a lot of families going to show up to the scene.
Absolutely.
So what we do is we are trained to implement the 7 critical tasks, which is once we get there, we relay information, we set up an inner perimeter, outer perimeter, a command post, a staging area where more resources can come in.
Yeah.
Because you have to manage the scene.
Absolutely.
And it may take days.
Yeah,
Hours or up to days.
Hours up to days,
Yeah.
and we ask for your patience.
Yeah.
And scenes like these, we ask for your patience. We also ask that you not put out any information that's not been verified, because a lot of times that happens.
Yes.
A lot of times people will put out information on their social media or post videos that can heighten up the community. They can send out the wrong information, and even officers, because we have guys that are going to be monitoring social media. They're going to be monitoring information outlets so that we can get information. Our job is to get as much information as we can forward to the guys that are in the situation themselves. And if they get the wrong information,
Yes.
that can cause a very chaotic scene. It's very important to know that that kind of stuff can hurt just not the community but the police officer as well, because then our information is completely diverted.
Right.
So now that we've talked about that, a little bit about such issues. We've talked about training. We've talked about tag teams. The training from a tactical standpoint. What is SWAT's role in all of this? So let's go a little bit over that. So patrol officers are given a certain amount of training. Then HPD has tactical teams. Tactical teams are what we call problem solvers. They usually go out to a certain area and complete tasks that are given to them. At the same time, those are the guys that 9 out of 10 times will be the ones, along with patrol, that will be responding to a critical situation like this, because this is what they
Because
they
if
go
the
for.
person has barricaded himself, the active shooter,
Yeah.
then he's not a threat to anybody else, but just to himself. Then
Yeah.
we'll have negotiators at the scene to get him to comply and turn himself in.
Mm-hmm.
But what I would like to do now is let's go ahead and recap
Yeah, let's go over.
what the main points we want our viewers to take from this.
Absolutely.
Our active shooter episode.
Yeah, so the first thing we want you to know, we emphasize this a lot, run, hide, and fight. 3 important things. Use them at your workplace. Create an action plan. Create an emergency response plan. It is very important. Incorporate run, hide, and fight in that action plan. Another thing we want you to do is target harden your location.
Yes.
Put security guards out there if you have to, off-duty police officers, some sort of deterrent threat mitigation that needs to be done. It's very important, especially for businesses, to do something like that. If you have a disgruntled employee that you're terminating, there's nothing that stops you from calling the police and letting them know, hey, we're terminating this employee. Can you please help us stay here while we're doing this? Those are important tasks. Again, we understand that this kind of situation is volatile. It evolves at the last second.
And the main point, thank you for making many points, but the main point that I would like the viewers to take from me is that, as I mentioned the stats, that the pre-attack behaviors, that the attacker usually gives some kind of hints, information, or that what he's about to do.
Yeah.
So, like I said, 80%, that's a significant number which we can use to intervene and stop the attack from happening.
Just bring it down to basic math. 8 out of 10 shootings can be stopped.
Yes.
If somebody calls and says, hey, I think this person is about to do an
Who
attack.
are these people? Spouses, friends, co-workers. So just make sure that you guys are vigilant at your work and just share the information.
Yeah. Again, viewers, we appreciate you being here with us today. Our condolences again to the people that had their lives affected by the attack in New Zealand. We hope you learned something. Please let us know if there's anything that we can do better for you. Until next time, thank you.
321 Central traffic stop.
21.
I'll be on East Green right outside Henry County. 911 dispatch.
321 status.